This episode I'm going to cover sudden loss of pressure. So your pump's pumping away and you find all of a sudden no pressure. Things that can cause that are your center washer in your buckets is broken, and because that's no longer there and there's a lot of force when your pump is pushing, these leathers get pushed back really hard, and if that is missing, it sort of acts like a scissors. There's the bucket, there's nothing to hold it back, so it just shears off, and that as soon as your buckets are sheared, that's it. You've wasted your good buckets. A lot of people, they'll even just throw new buckets in and not put that center washer in. You're just going to have the same thing happening again in no time, and you go through a lot of buckets that way. Make sure you got that center washer in. Another thing you might want to be looking at is the top valve screws over here. If they've come undone, well, then the water's just sloshing in and out of the pump. So it could also be a broken spring on one of them or both of them, but more than likely they'll just unscrew themselves and pop out, and it's not uncommon. Just screw them back in, make sure all the bits are there. Check your suction. That's this side here, that's your suction side. I've found that a lot of the time, especially when they're on farms, you're going to suck up some rubbish into it, or there's just going to be something that I've even seen a Banksia cone got stuck on the suction pipe, and that was it, end of the game. And the guy did so much work to try and fix it, and he'd fill the pipe with water thinking his valve at the bottom's holding the water. Meanwhile, it's a Banksia cone that's stopping the whole thing going. So just make sure that you haven't sucked something into through the one-way valve, or just on your suction you might have a filter on there. Make sure the filter's going all right. So another thing is these bottom two valves over here, they're your suction valves. As the water comes in, these are the guys that hold the water when the piston pulls it forward and stops it going back through the pipe. Any stuff behind their seats, now this is what one of their seats will look like, and I've seen it where there was just a tiny little bit of stone poking through, and that it was just sort of sitting like that, and that was enough to cause the pump. No, it's just not going to work because the water's just sloshing back and forward past it. So small gravel or even rust breaking off inside the chamber that's on the suction side there, that's this one underneath, that's enough to cause it. So it just stops pumping because it's just sloshing backwards and forwards. The other thing you're going to find is check your belt. If the belt is slipping, well, then it's not going to be pumping. As soon as it looks like, it looks like it's working, but it's only just the motor's going really fast and the belt's going, the wheel's turning real slow. And the way you do that is you tighten up this nut over here, and that'll lean the motor over a bit more and put more tension on the pulley. Don't over tension it, because that's one way to ruin the bearings that the shaft goes through. It's just too much pulling on them, and you'll find that that's going to wear everything out prematurely on the oil end. Other things that can cause it is the wheel slipping. So if the wheel is not tightened onto the shaft enough, there's a flat spot on the shaft and the wheel screw sits on top of that. If for some reason maybe somebody's clamped the hose or the pump's really pushing hard, sometimes that's just gonna slip around and it's just going to be moving on the shaft, and you think, oh, everything's running here, but it's actually not. It's the wheel's just spinning around. And then another thing that would cause it, and this is also very common, is somebody's kinked the hose, or because the pump's pushing such high pressure that these two bottom valves will blow out. Now once they blow out, you'll find that I'm just going to find one here for you, sort of thing. It'll blow out the side, and that's perfectly fine. It's not the end of the world. I do suggest replacing the valve gasket once you do that, because it tends to tear the material that's inside it, and you'll push it back in and tighten all back up, and it'll do it again shortly after. that material of the insertion rubber really adds strength to it and stops that blowout. But also if that isn't tight enough, it's going to happen more often. But when if you turn the pump over by hand, you'll often just hear a little tsh, tsh, and maybe some little drips of water that you'll see coming from these sides. Yeah, that's how you know you've done that. Hope that helps.